For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man put asunder. There's a lot of confusion today, both inside and outside of the church, about marriage, family, mercy, and whether long-established Catholic doctrines can be altered. About marriage, Jesus was very clear. He said, from the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man put asunder. See, Jesus referred back to Genesis, to the creation story, in order to make it clear that marriage is God's creation, not man's invention. Marriage is God's creation, not man's invention. And this is the key passage on which the Christian doctrine of marriage is founded. And it refers back to creation. It refers back to the natural order by which God created us male and female for one another. Since God forges indissoluble bond, the insoluble bond that unites a married couple, it follows that no civil or religious authority has the power to redefine it, or to change it, or to break it. Because God established it. Following Jesus, the church bases her teaching about marriage upon creation as God established it before the fall. Here is what the church says about marriage from the Catechism. Marriage is, quote, a covenant or partnership for life between a man and a woman, which is ordered to the well-being of the spouses and to the procreation and upbringing of children. When validly contracted between two baptized people, marriage is a sacrament. Now, it's true that because of the fall, because of our fallen nature, and our consequent brokenness as human beings, fidelity to marriage can be a struggle. But fidelity to marriage must always be our goal, with God's help and grace. And note the significance of the fact that the church, the Catholic Church, recognizes that marriage is a sacrament. Marriage has been so degraded in our culture, it's so drained of meaning that we forget that marriage is a sacrament, similar in supernatural power and grace to baptism, ordination, and the Eucharist. And what that means is that marriage not only unites one Christian man and one Christian woman in a lifetime union that is greater than the sum of its parts, but it also gives special graces to them with the support of the church and the sacraments, of course. Special graces to fulfill the duties and to bear the fruit of that union. And notice also that marriage is not only about the happiness of the couple, but it's about the serious matter of raising faithful children. It's a principle of Catholic marriage that it needs to be open to life, to what God will give as the fruit of the marriage. For Christian marriage gives rise to Christian families, and this is what our catechism says about families. A man and a woman united in marriage, together with their children, form a family. And this institution is prior to any other recognized by public authority. which has an obligation to recognize it. I want to repeat that because it's so important. The institution of marriage is prior to any other institution recognized by public authority. And public authority has an obligation to recognize it as such. That's our church teaching. And the reason for that is because God created it, man did not invent it. In other words, the state has no authority to define what marriage is because marriage is from God and precedes the state. It comes before the state. It originates before the state. It's ontological. It's an act of creation. But the state is obligated to recognize and protect Christian marriage as defined by God. Furthermore, the church teaches that the Christian family is the womb of life and the basic cell of Christian civilization. Christian civilization is built on the foundation of families, Christian families. A mother's womb is where souls created in God, created by God in His image, are brought into the world. A father's protection, so that's the mother's contribution, so that's where her contribution begins. A father's protection, a father's provision, and a father's discipline and love help nurture the infant into adulthood. And our families are where our children first learn the faith, where they learn the meaning of charity, and from which they are launched out into the world as faithful Catholics. And this week, St. Therese of Lisieux was Saint of the Day. And what's especially remarkable about St. Therese, other than the fact that she's remarkable, is that her family was utterly remarkable. Her family, her faithful, pious Catholic family that was not wealthy, it was poor, but it was faithful, produced 5 vocations and 3 saints. See, that's the power. That is the power of the faithful Christian family. And that's why it is the foundation of Christian civilization. Strong families are the cornerstone of a strong culture that values life, and Pope St. John Paul called the family the domestic church. On the other hand, the breakdown of the family increases the temptation to abort, it increases exploitation of women and children, it increases violence and despair, and it destroys culture. The casual acceptance of divorce and adultery and sexual immorality that has occurred in America over the last 100 years has degraded our nation's families and produced the broken, anti-life culture we see all around us. John Paul II called it the culture of death. It's not hard to see that the world we live in today is strongly antagonistic to the Christian understanding of family. Certain groups in our nation, groups that are influenced by atheistic and communist ideas, are waging an all-out war against life, marriage, and the Catholic family. And in assaulting marriage, they are attacking God. They know that they cannot attack God Himself, so they attack Him through the family. And that is why, now more than ever, we individually, as families, and as a church, must uphold traditional Catholic values. Our vision here at Christ the King Catholic Church is to be a church where faithful, traditional Catholic families are protected and nurtured, and where the Catholic faith, as it was known and lived by the great Catholic saints of history, is taught, lived, defended, and faithfully passed on to our children and grandchildren. Today is a joyful day for us because today we began the first session of our 2024-2025 Faith Formation Program year. Our Christian education program is healthy. We have on our rosters 46 children aged 3 to 12 signed up in our Sunday morning faith formation classes. We also have 43 teenagers in our Monday evening youth program called Arise. We support homeschooling, and we have 56 children and teens from 16 different families participating in the two homeschool co-op groups that we have here every week, one taking place on Monday and one taking place on Thursday. Most of them, I'd say many of them, most of them perhaps are from Christ the King, but we have also drawn in homeschooling families from several other churches. Because to support homeschooling is one of the core missions of Christ the King. So I would say these numbers, for a church our size, these are numbers we can be proud of.